What's up, guys? Mickle here, and David Schwartz just came out on Twitter saying that we could have two big events take place before the Ripple party on September 29th. In this video, I want to go over what he said could happen because there are some very interesting things on this list, including a Ripple IPO, a Ripple settlement with the SEC, XRP to new all-time highs. In this video, I'm going to go over exactly what I thought he was talking about here because he specifically picked from this list of things outlined for him and said two of these things will happen before the Ripple party on September 29th. In this video, we're going to talk about that, as well as a massive announcement coming out of SBI involving XRP. I want to show you just how early we are to this asset class, and a lot of people don't even realize how early we truly are. In this video, we're going to go over that, so make sure to stick around for this whole thing. Like always, your support means so much to this channel. If you enjoy these videos, make sure to take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It's really going to help me out so much. Also, if you ever need a good place to buy some XRP or the Flare token, make sure to check out my favorite exchange Uphold down in the description of this video. With that said though, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. So I want to start this video off and just quickly touch on the massive announcement that just came out of SBI, and that is that they are going to be using Ripple and XRP for remittances between the Philippines, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Now this is absolutely massive because what we're seeing is now that the Ripple SEC case is over, big institutions are opening their doors to using XRP for its full intended purpose, which is to move money all around the world. Now, this is something that has been being laid out for a while now, but now that the case is over, we are starting to see announcements for using XRP really starting to pick up. Now, I do think in order to have the big announcements, in order for the big institutions to really feel comfortable with fully onboarding Ripple and XRP, they are going to need a complete end to the case. They need this thing to be completely over with, but institutions outside the United States are going to start to get more aggressive and start to put out more of these announcements. It just shows that Ripple is making progress for their full intended vision of making XRP this pristine asset to move money all around the world, and it's just awesome to see developments like this, more markets being opened up, because it just pushes us further to our ultimate thesis that we have been talking about since day one. Now, a lot of people look at the markets today, and I don't think they truly understand exactly how early we are. Guys, we are so early to this asset class. Sometimes I think people lose sight of that because we're in such smart communities here on YouTube and Twitter. So many people think, oh, there are so many people who understand this. Guys, I want you to listen to this clip that Dark Horse put on Twitter earlier today because it's really going to help you understand that we are so early to this asset class. And once we start to get mainstream adoption, once we start to have things finally get built out, these announcements of moving XRP between the Philippines, Vietnam, and Indonesia, these are just going to be the baby steps to something so much greater. Listen up to this clip and then we'll break it down.
We're in the early stages of this technology, and I really want to provide some examples of that. It generally takes about 25 to 30 years for human beings to adopt a new data transfer technology. Radio was invented in 1890, but wasn't commercially available until the 1920s. TV was developed in the 1920s, but wasn't in homes until the 1950s. Email was invented in 1969, but most of you most likely didn't have an email address until 1997. There is one that I really want to focus on, and that's TCP/IP, which is the internet, for those that don't know. It was developed as a DARPA project in 1970, but it wasn't really commercially accepted until 1995 when it was rolled out with Windows 95. There's another important date, which is 1983. 1983 is when TCP/IP was accepted as the standard protocol for internet development, 13 years after it was created. Well, here we are, 13 years after Bitcoin was created, and we're just now starting to talk about standardization. This is not a coincidence. Adoption at this stage is not a technology problem, it's a human conditioning issue. Every 13-year-old in the United States has only existed in a world where Bitcoin has existed. 3 years from now, every 16-year-old will have only existed in a world where Bitcoin has existed. 16 years old is an important date because it's generally when someone becomes interested in becoming a developer. They are the adoption layer. We here in this room, we're the infrastructure layer. It's our responsibility to create an environment where every 13-year-old American has a framework upon which they can build the next world on. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
First of all, the fact that this conversation is even happening in government is so awesome. We need more education like this going on. But I just thought the point here was outstanding. So many of us understand this technology at such a high level. We think we are so much further in the progression of it than we really are. But at the end of the day, we are so early. After the internet was developed, it still took 25 years to get mass adoption, and we are likely that early or earlier in terms of cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies have only been around for 10 years. We really only see speculative use cases for them, but meanwhile, in the background, once in a while, we can get glimpses of real utility being built. And that's why I always share things like this. Some people will see announcements like this and say, oh, why didn't the price go up? It's just the Philippines, Vietnam, and Indonesia. They're small countries. It's not a big deal. When is a big announcement going to happen? That's what we need to understand. We are so early to this. The reason why we look at announcements like this is because they show us where the big announcements are going to come from later down the road. Ripple is laying the pipelines for an internet of value. They are the company using the digital asset XRP who are making the biggest strides in actually creating institutional adoption for this asset class. I think when it's all said and done, 10 to 15 years from now, Ripple and XRP are going to be the clear and obvious winners in really transforming our financial system. And we're going to look back at announcements like this and understand that this was the start. These were the small nations, these were the small institutions that first started jumping on board and adopting this technology. And at the end of the day, there's only going to be a certain amount of winners, but it's announcements like this that let me know that as this technology plays out, just like this guy said it does, we are going to see Ripple and XRP at the top of all of it. I want to move on and actually talk about something pretty interesting that happened on Twitter earlier today. And it started with XRPP tweeting out my conservative predictions for the Ripple XRP community party. 1. Ripple announces a full settlement with the SEC. 2. Ripple announces an IPO. 3. XRP runs past all-time highs during the party. 4. Gary Gensler's march naked through the crowd as we all yell shame. Game of Thrones reference right there. And then last of all, XRPP does jello shots with B-Rad, Brad Garlinghouse. So while this was just a funny tweet at first, David Schwartz actually responded to it and said only 2 of those things will happen. Now that's pretty interesting because now we have to go through the list and think which one of these 2 things could happen. So first of all, I think we're going to have to take the Gary Gensler one immediately off the list. I don't think there is any way that is ever going to happen. And in that same breath, the one that I feel pretty confident that David Schwartz would predict is going to happen is XRPP does jello shots with Brad. So we have 1 off the list and 1 on the list for what could happen. That leaves 3 more. 1, Ripple announces a full settlement with the SEC. 2, Ripple announces an IPO. 3, XRP runs past all-time highs during the party. Now, as much as I would love 3 to be correct, XRP runs past all-time highs through the party, I just don't know how David Schwartz would actually predict that. I don't think he has that kind of power, so we're going to take that one off the table. Number 1 is Ripple announces a full settlement with the SEC. Now, this is another one where I just don't think that could possibly happen. And the main reason why I don't think that could possibly happen is because right now the SEC is appealing the decision in the Ripple SEC case, and Judge Torres isn't going to actually rule on whether or not they are allowed to appeal the decision until probably late November, early December. So the SEC is not going to settle before they know whether or not they're allowed to appeal the case. Why would you even appeal the case if you were ultimately going to settle? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, I guess you could make the claim that the SEC was just using that as leverage for their settlement negotiations, but I just don't feel comfortable thinking that the SEC is actually going to settle. So far, everything we have seen from the SEC is their goal is just to drag Ripple through the mud, make things take as long as possible, try to hurt the company financially, and nothing really comes down to them actually making a logical choice. So I'm going to take that one off the board, and instead I'm going to go with 1, XRPP does jello shots with Brad, and 2, Ripple announces an IPO. Now, I don't think Ripple is going to be able to IPO in the middle of a case with the SEC, but I don't think they necessarily need the case to be over to announce they're going to IPO later this year. They probably have a pretty good idea of when the case is going to end. They can probably comfortably come out and say something like, when the case is over, we're going to IPO. So if I was to pick any two things on this list, I would pick those two. Now, obviously, my favorite things on this list to come true would be Ripple announces a full settlement with the SEC and XRP runs past all-time highs during the party. If I could just pick two off this list, those would be the two I pick. But just practically speaking and me trying to guess, assuming David Schwartz is telling the truth, saying two of these things will happen, those would be the two I would pick. Now, I am curious what you guys would say. Just pause the video right now and leave down in the comments below which one of these two you think will hit. I thought this was pretty interesting. I saw it on Twitter today and I definitely needed to quickly cover it. The last thing I wanted to show you before this video was over is just a pretty interesting chart that I came across. So many people are predicting that the next great market crash is right around the corner. We are going into a massive bear market. I just wanted to show you this chart because I thought it was super interesting, and it's the US stock fundamental index versus the price action. And what you can see is it just really doesn't look like we are in a time period where we are going into a massive crash. Every single time we had a massive crash, we saw this fundamental indicator flashing as it dipped down into negative territory. But what we can see is we are well into positive territory right now. And almost every single time we were in positive territory, we did not see any kind of stock market crash. I just wanted to point this out. I know a lot of people in the cryptocurrency markets are very, very skeptical or very bearish on the stock market. In my opinion, if the stock market goes down, cryptocurrencies are going to crash even harder. And if the stock market goes up, cryptocurrencies will enter a brand new bull market. Therefore, I am paying very close attention to the stock market. I want it to do as good as possible because it's my understanding that at the end of the day, big money controls the cryptocurrency market. They are not going to get involved in cryptocurrencies if we enter a depression or a recession. They're only going to get involved if they think market conditions are good. Therefore, my fingers are crossed that this indicator is correct. We are going to move to all-time new highs on the traditional indexes, and that's going to be a very bullish moment for cryptocurrencies. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this update. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does mean so much. And for now, Mickle out.